Today I'm going to show you how you can take swirls and use them in borders and sashings for your quilt projects. Hi, I'm Kim Jamison Hurst, and swirls are a really popular free motion quilting motif, and I want to show you how you can take them, change them up a little bit, add a few other designs to them, and use them in confined areas, in other words, in borders and sashing. So if you don't know what a swirl is, let's take a look at a swirl. This is a swirl. It's a circular design that comes into a point and then backs out and goes off again. Now you can use these as all over designs, but they work really well in, as I said, confined areas, like they're in prison almost. So in sashing or borders and blocks too. But I want to show you different designs of swirls and also different other motifs you can add to the swirls to go in kind of what I call a straight line design. So let's take this little swirl here. I'm going to actually stitch a new one because I want to continue along. So we're going to pretend that we're in an area, so like we're stitching on a line really, to start off this swirl. So I'm going to lock my stitches, and I'm going to go along in a horizontal line. So we're going to make our first swirl. Right, then we can continue on and make another one. Now, the size of your swirl is going to depend on how much space you have in that border or sashing, of course. So this is probably about a 2-inch maybe border that I would put this in. Okay, I'm just going to stop here and show you what I've quilted, just so you get the idea here. So you just quilt swirls along in that border or sashing area, adjusting the size, as I mentioned before, for the size of the space that you're stitching in, of course. So they don't have to be perfect. If you wanted to, you could actually change the size of them. You could have a big one, a small one, big one, small one, that type of thing. So lots of different things you can do just with a simple swirl. But why not add a few other elements into this? So keeping that simple swirl again, why not add something else? Let's see what we can add here. All right, so first I'm going to do my swirl. And then I'm going to add something else. In this case, I'm going to add kind of a peaky line. All right, so you think of it as a mountaintop, a triangle, whatever you want to think about. And then I'm going to go on again to create another swirl. Now, you'll notice, I'll have to pull out and show you in a few minutes, but I've switched direction of the swirls, okay? This one came in this way, this one's going the opposite way, just because of how I'm making that design. And then we're going to put another peak in, and then this time we're going to go back in the same direction for the first swirl. So we would just continue on in that manner, adding these kind of little peaks or triangles, whatever you'd like to call them, in between each of the swirls. Now, if my swirl is not quite right size-wise, let's say it's too big or it's not big enough, you can see here I went very, very close with my lines here to fit that into the area. Here I had a little bit more space coming around when I came out here because I needed to make it a little bit bigger. So you can adjust your swirls like that. And again, no one's really going to notice if they're not perfectly spaced within the lines you stitched inside that swirl. But that gives you a bit of a different look there with switching the direction of the swirls. This one I've gone back again, actually like this. I was going to go the other way, but you know, again, it doesn't really matter. So you can switch the direction, you don't have to. You may do it inadvertently like I did, and it doesn't really matter. What you're going to notice is a pattern. Swirl, peak, that's what people will notice. And again, you can make the peaks as high as the space you're in or lower, or you could even make them wider if you wanted to. So lots of variation there too. You always got to be thinking about how you can change things a little bit to get a different look. Now, let's talk about something else you can do with the swirl itself. I'll move over to this area. So you can make what look like ribbon swirls. So this is going to be a design where you're actually crossing lines in the swirl itself. And I'll show you how this looks. This is a design that I learned about from Sharon Blackmore of Love Shack Quilts. And it's really quite an interesting design, very effective, quite elegant, and not that hard to do. Now this is a little bit different, this swirl. We're going to start at the bottom and we're going to move up and swirl in. So we're starting at the bottom and going up and just swirling in. So just one kind of motion. So you'll come up and stop to get that point. And now we're going to go back down, but we're going to cross in a couple spots. Before we finish the swirl. So I'm going to do another one, then I'll pull it out to give you a closer look of it. All right, so it is a swirl, but it's a little bit different than some of the other ones we've been doing. So you can see here that I have gone up, I've made my swirl, I've stopped, then I came down and crossed, and then crossed. So I'm crossing where the line starts to curve, and I'm crossing back where it starts to curve down. Doesn't have to be perfect at all, but you can definitely see what's happening here. It looks like a ribbon, right? Now I could have finished that off. I didn't go all the way over, but again, it doesn't matter. And then we've come up again and gone back. So you can just continue these. These look really effective in a border. They also work really nice as an all-over design. So quite an elegant design. Not that difficult to make. I think they look harder than they are to stitch, which is always a good thing. So that's kind of fun to do as well. Now what about adding something else in between a swirl? Or let's take these ones and do something else with them. Why don't we do that? Sure. I have lots of ideas. So we're going to do our ribbon swirl again, but we're going to bring the tail of it back a little closer. Let me show you what that looks like. Just a little bit of an extra element in it. Just increase that complexity, the look of it anyway. Looking like it's complex is always good, right? Okay, so now as I'm coming down, I'm actually going to loop in here, you'll see. And back. And then I'm going to do another one. And I'm going to do one more just to give you a good idea of what this looks like. All right. So you can see these are the ribbon swirls that we did before, that we just did. But then when I come down, I've actually gone in a little bit and I've backtracked. Then I make my second one, in, backtrack. If you're not able to backtrack perfectly, not a problem. It'll actually just add a more interesting element to the design. If you're not able to backtrack properly, continue to not backtrack properly, because then it looks like you're doing it on purpose, right? So you can see, and I've actually changed up, this is a fatter one, and you can see that this was quite a bit narrower, so you get a bit of a different look too, just to see what those ribbon swirls look like when they are not quite as fat, let's say. All right, I have something else I want to show you as well. So let's add something else in between these ribbon loops and see what that looks like. Why don't we keep it simple and add a circle or loop? So we're going to make the ribbon swirl first. I'm going to join it at the bottom, and then I'm going to go off and make a loop or a circle or something like that. So you can see that this can extend your design quite a bit with just putting that little circle in the middle. And while I put a simple circle in the middle, you could do like a double loop if you wanted to. You could have a double loop where the second one is at the top in that one and maybe at the bottom on this one before you continue on. So lots of different things you can do there as well, but I think it's kind of fun to add something in between those ribbon swirls when it's in a border area. You could certainly have added the peaks as well. That would have been kind of fun, or I should say instead of, you could have had the peak up here in between those ribbon swirls, maybe changing the direction of the ribbon swirls as well. I hope that's given you some ideas on how you can use swirls and some other designs in a border or in a sashing in a confined area. They're lots of fun. I hope you'll try the ribbon swirls because they are very elegant looking, and I think they're great as an all-over design as well. If you have ideas for how you like to use swirls in your quilt projects, please leave a comment below. I'd love to hear what you have to say. Thanks for watching. Please give this video a thumbs up. It really helps to get it in front of other viewers just like you. And remember to subscribe and hit the bell so you'll be notified the next time I release a new video. And before you go, check out these other videos I've included just for you. For more helpful quilting information, be sure to go to my website at www.chatterboxquilts.com. Start that again. It's completely wrong. Just a minute. Got myself confused.